Hey everyone, Guy here with Datalytics. We're going to be going through a quick request that I got to do a integration between Plutio and Zoho Projects. And what we're going to be doing with this quick walkthrough is integrating those two softwares, Plutio and Zoho Projects. So when a Plutio proposal is signed, then a Zoho Projects project is created. How we're going to be accomplishing this is with Zapier. It is possible. What we're going to be using is called a webhook in the first action or the trigger. We're going to be utilizing a filter, and the final app is going to be the Zoho Projects connection. This is a 3-step Zapier integration in what they call multi-step Zap. So if you do not have a paid account or if you're on a free plan with Zapier, this is going to require a paid plan to accomplish this. We also need a custom API manager entity or connection inside of Plutio to utilize this method. I have a separate video that covers that, and I'll put the link in the description as well. But what we're going to be doing is walking through this step by step to show you how I created it and the methods that I used. So again, the overall, we're going to use a webhook in the first one as a trigger. We're going to use a filter and then create the project in Zoho Projects. To do the first step, we would utilize the catch hook event off the webhooks by Zapier. And again, as a paid account user, you would also get access to webhooks, which you can use as a trigger or an action inside of Zapier. So for this, we are going to be using it as the trigger. So we're going to be utilizing the catch hook action. There's 3, retrieve, which is off of a polling action, which is a cyclical scheduled action. The catch hook or raw hook, these two are instant. So we're going to be utilizing this one as an instant action. And by that I mean every time this webhook gets data posted to it, and I'm going to cover that in a minute, it's going to fire this integration. So we'll use that, hit continue. Now it's going to generate this webhook URL from Zapier. What you're going to do is take this, copy it, go into your Plutio account in the API Manager section, into the custom connection you just created, and put that copied webhook into the webhook URL section of that connection itself. What you'll also want to do, and I cover this in my other video at length, so please reference that if you're unfamiliar. I use this method in this as well, in this integration as well. Deselect or descope all of the API connection endpoints in Plutio to just the 3 related to proposals. Proposals.create, proposal.edit, and then proposal.remove. Doing that will limit the scope of that API connection and will only allow this to run off those 3 endpoints or the triggers or actions inside of Plutio, which is going to save on Zap runs. It's also going to save on the overall cost of your Zapier plan if you're using other Zaps and you want to just incorporate this into your current Zap stack. That also helps manage the API connection that you have inside of Plutio, so you know that when proposals are worked on inside of your account, that's the app connection or API connection that's working inside of Plutio. Okay, so we're going to copy that, put it back into our Plutio account, and I'll cover this right here. Settings, API Manager, go into our connection, and you would put that right here. Make sure to toggle it on. Descope all of these endpoints to just the 3. Let's go back into Zapier. We tested it. I've already ran this, so I've got some test data. Now the things that we're going to be looking for when we set up this next step in the filter is the method, which is the proposal.create. And we also need the status of the proposal. And that also indicates what the whole intent of this is for, is when a client signs, or your end user, whomever's using the proposal, signs it and it gets approved. That's what we're looking for right here, status approved. We'll continue. So this is going to show as a green check mark. That works fine. Now we're also going to set up the filter. So this action is through the plus button, and it's right here, filter. Only continue if, we're going to use filter by Zapier. Only continue if, and we're going to use 2 statements in this filter, and they're One is the default that comes with the app. The other is an additional and statement. And by and, I mean it's an expletive statement, so it must exist or it must occur. An or means either or. You can either have this or this, but this one we're going to use both because we need both to continue the rest of the integration or the automation per the scope of what we need to do. So we're going to go method, which you can search for it here, which we just covered in the previous section, which is method, right here. So you click this. Then we need it to exactly match, text exactly matches, proposal.create, which is the endpoint that we specified in the API connection that we created. And we also need status. So you're going to search status, approved, exactly matches, approved. Continue. It works fine. Close that step. And the next thing we're going to do is go into Zoho Projects. Now, a key thing to keep in mind before I start this section is to get the test data to work, you need to do a couple of things inside of your Plutio account. You need to set up a test client. Typically, if I have a work email, I would be sending inside of Plutio for my work email. I would also set up a personal email as like a test client. So I would have the company name be like test company. I'd set myself up as a client inside of my own account so I can send back and forth proposals and contracts and anything I need to test any new systems or processes that I develop within Plutio for my business. So utilizing this in this instance is very handy because I just created a proposal, sent it to myself, and then signed it as myself. And again, as the account owner, I can then go back and delete all that test data, and it doesn't affect anything. And then what I can get from that is this test data, so I can go in and find, it'll show this right here. And this is what we need to not only build the correct Zap that we need to, but it's also best for testing and validation of this process. So what we'll do here is, after the filter, click the plus button, search Zoho Projects, click that, comes up, choose app and event. You need to create project, which is right there. Now, if you do not have an account linked to your Zapier account with Zoho Projects, you would click here. If you do not have one, it'll say sign in to Zoho Projects, and it'll take you through the authentication steps that you need per your account. I'm not going to go through that because that typically contains sensitive data that I'm not going to show on this tutorial, but you would walk through that. Once it's complete in Zapier, it will show up here in your accounts. Set up the action. Now here's where you can then make dynamic your project information inside of Zoho. So right here I have just a really simple test name for the project. I've got test projects 4 and then my client name. And test description, you go whatever you want it to be. If you want to put in some dynamic data, again, all the data from the proposal that was just signed pulls through in this step right here, in the catch hook step. So you'd go here and then find what you need in this data section to pull in any dynamic information you need. Client name, if you need the services that were signed up for, you pull them here. There's also some steps you can take to pull out that data if you need to iterate through it, or what Zapier calls looping. So you can do all that in this step, and then previous if you need to get that kind of information. Drop that in here, select your template. I do not have any in my account, so none are populating through, but you would see your templates here and utilize that in any fashion you need to. Hit close. And again, you'll run this once, maybe twice. Once it's all green, rename your Zap to however you want it to be, and then turn it on. What I also recommend to my clients is do end-to-end testing. So we ran it inside of the non-live Zap. We also need to run it in the live version. So now that it's on and it's listening for that webhook data, which is what we created up here inside your Plutio account, we need to go through and actually do another live test. So set up another proposal, send it to you as the client, sign it and then make sure inside of your Zapier account and inside of Plutio that everything matches. And what I mean by that is when the proposal is signed by you, it will obviously show up in your Plutio account as accepted, but what you need it to then show is the Zap Run History, which you can see here, view Zap History, and then you'll see the runs that it takes. So you need it to, and you'll see it right here where it runs as soon as it's played. Keep in mind that typically webhooks take a minute or two to populate from the origin app, which right here is Plutio, to the destination, which is Zapier. So if you sign it and then that same minute you go into Zapier to check if it's running, do not panic, as it takes a minute for the data to get posted and for the two apps to talk. So if you do not see it when you hit the sign or accept button on your proposal, just refresh it. Give it a minute, refresh it. You'll see it run, and then you also want to check that it run correctly and that there's no errors or issues inside of your integration. Once it's all said and done, leave it on, rename it, do what you need it to do, and then you can also then double check Zoho Projects to see if it created per your liking inside of Zoho Projects. You need to edit any of the information inside of the Zap itself to change the dynamic data or what's pulled through. Do all that by all means. And then that is a quick and easy introduction and walkthrough on how to create a instant action from Plutio when a proposal is signed to Zoho Projects inside of Zapier. Thank you, and we'll see you soon.